I have a priest friend down in North Carolina who writes a blog that I've been following lately and have come to really enjoy. A couple of weeks ago, I was reading one of his reflections that was about fear, and I found his message so interesting that I wanted to share it with you all this morning. To be clear, the insight that he offered on his blog actually came from the associate rector at his parish. So yes, I'm starting this sermon with a message from a priest to another priest to me, which is maybe why I don't write my own blog. But listen, here's what he wrote. I'm grateful for Aubra's sermon several weeks ago in which she talked about how fear plays into our lives. She offered a powerful insight about how the Lenten disciplines we take on tend to have a direct relationship to the fears that are most dominant in our lives. That really hit home for me. I realize now that almost any Lenten discipline I've ever taken on has been clearly related to my fears. Think about it. Using herself as an example, Audra shared how she read the whole Bible one year during Lent. Her fear? Not feeling like she was Christian enough. This year, I'm trying to memorize hymns for Lent. My fear? I worry about getting our church into a rut with the same hymns because I don't know enough church music by heart. We've all taken on Lenten practices of less junk food, more exercise, less stress. The fears? Mortality, aging, becoming sick, it's all there. The beauty in this is that in coming up with seemingly benign Lenten challenges for ourselves, we accidentally bring to the surface some much bigger issues. Interesting, right? I found it so interesting that I have not even ever considered this in any of my Lenten disciplines before. Now, I have to be honest with you, the word discipline has never been one that I've loved. It causes me to shudder a little, and my inner rebel wants to come out as soon as somebody says the word. But for some reason, every year when Lent comes around, I really look forward to taking on a Lenten discipline. Specifically, I like to give something up. It helps me to remember to pray, which I need. So I was curious to explore this idea that whatever discipline I have taken on is in fact representative of my greatest fear. But then this interesting thing happened. My husband and I, we kind of failed Lent this year. I'm not sure what happened. We wanted to give up sugar. And yes, that is tied to some of our fears about mortality and aging and getting sick, as my friend says. But I really couldn't do much in the way of exploring that, because by the time I read this blog, 12 days into Lent, my husband and I had already been eating sugar for 10 days. And if I'm being honest, I think the only reason we effectively gave up sugar for the first 2 days is because we were visiting my sister, and she doesn't eat sugar at all. There's none in the house. So it's not even like we can congratulate ourselves for making it for Ash Wednesday and the day after. I just, for whatever reason, could not grab onto the discipline this year. So in some of the quiet moments of our Convocation Eucharist last weekend, I spent a little time reflecting on my Lenten failure and decided that if I couldn't explore my fear through the lens of my non-existent Lenten discipline, I might as well come at it directly. As I gazed up at the beautiful windows in St. Luke's Church, I asked myself the question, all right, Meaghan, what is it that you fear most right now? Let's just look right at it. After a moment of reflection, I almost laughed out loud in the church when I realized that the thing that I fear the most right now is failure. So it looks like my Lenten discipline reflects my greatest fear, after all. But it's true. My husband and I have recently made a big move back home here to Rhode Island after 4 years away. I've taken on a job that requires all of the skills I have and some of the skills I don't have, and my husband's starting a business. And anyone will tell you that's a great idea in this economy. We're hopeful, we're excited, we're happy to be here, but we're also afraid of falling flat on our faces. So I had to smile to myself last week in church, but I also felt a certain sense of peace about my inability to give up sugar for Jesus. Maybe that's just how it was meant to be for me this year. And instead of berating myself for that, I've decided to make an effort to just look directly at my fear and invite God into that space. I might fail, but I will not be alone, and God's grace will weave itself in and around my experience as God's grace always does. Facing our fears, really looking at them, is so challenging. And I think in our culture, we go to great lengths to distract ourselves so that we don't really have to look at that fear. Distraction, it's getting easier all the time, especially now that you can carry a device in your pocket that lets you check your email even while you're at church if you want, though I don't recommend that. But our Old Testament passage today shows us that long before the dawn of the internet, we humans had trouble facing our fears. We have this really kind of funky passage from Numbers today, where the Israelites are doing what they do. They're following Moses through the wilderness, and they're in circles, and they're searching for the promised land. And they're engaging in what might be the most timeless distraction tactic. They are complaining, and with good reason. It's been a while since they left home, and the wilderness is no vacation. Then, according to the story, God sends poisonous serpents among the people so that they might be bitten and die. It's a real pick-me-up story. When Moses intervenes on their behalf, which he does patiently time and time again, God instructs him to put a serpent on a pole so that anyone who has been bitten can look at the serpent and live. It's a bizarre story, really, but if you think about it, it also offers us some instruction on how to find our own salvation. Because the Israelite must look directly at the very thing that is killing them in order to live. And despite everything we might do to avoid what we fear, God reminds us that we must face our darkness if we are to overcome it. We must face what is killing us in order to live. Think about it. When has any problem in your life ever gone away because you have ignored it? When has any fear lost its magnitude because you finally just watched enough hours of television? When has having another drink helped you to truly mend whatever is broken inside of you? When has spending time on Facebook relieved you from your greatest sorrow? When has shopping helped you to see God's light and goodness? Oh, there are so many trappings that our world offers us as false relief from what ails us. But let me be clear that our salvation, our relief from fear, our recovery from what ails us, our healing balm for our brokenness, it comes from God alone. And this week we have this divine reminder that in order to make space for God to come in and heal and comfort us, we must first be willing to be honest about where it is that we need healing. We need to be willing to look directly at our serpents and to cry or yell or lament or even whisper, "I need help. This is killing me." I'm not convinced that God sent poisonous serpents into the wilderness to kill the Israelites. I think that God is an easy scapegoat when bad things happen because we like to have an explanation for suffering, when really life is just full of suffering because of the world we live in and because of the world we've created for ourselves. We love to wring our hands and say, "Oh, why has God brought me into this wilderness?" when in fact we walked there ourselves. But I am convinced that God surrounds us with grace in the wilderness, even if we have blindly wandered there on our own accord. We have a God who tends to our hearts even when all we can do is bitterly complain. We have a God that offers us salvation over and over and over again. We need only accept the invitation to that salvation. We have a couple of weeks left to our Lenten season, and I don't know where you are this Lent or what your practice has been, if anything. Maybe the most you can do is make it to the pew this week, and that is no small feat. But I want to remind you in the remaining weeks of this sacred season to look for the serpents in your life and to set them in front of you so that you might look at them honestly. Stop whatever it is that you're doing to distract yourself for a day, for an hour, even for a couple of minutes. Find your fears. Face your darkness. Look directly at whatever it is that is killing you. And I promise you that if you do, God's grace will swoop in around you and you will live. Amen.